Welcome, everyone, to another Tuesday 10X Mastermind here on the Trust Engine Mortgage Coach channel. I am thrilled to be stepping in for your normal host, Dave Savage. I think most of you in this community know me. I'm Todd Bookspan, the founder of Win by Noon and co-founder of this Facebook group that this is all part of. And I'm thrilled to be here today. You'll notice this is not my normal place. I'm at a place called the Human Connection Institute. You should all check it out. Michael Burnoff wrote a book called Average Sucks, which I think is a great kickoff to today. But I am uh, I'm so excited about our guest. Paul, who's behind the scenes here, and I were discussing the most difficult guests to get on the show, and Jay is at the top of the list. And here's my experience with Jay, and the reason I'm willing to step out of really the seminar that I come to a couple times a year to center myself and focus on wealth building. And it's the fact that I've known Jay Crowell for over 10 years, but probably closer to 15. And I'd like to tell the story so that you kind of understand who Jay is and why I think he's the perfect guest to have on as we kick off this year. This meeting's titled the Weekly Sales Meeting. And back in the day when I was in a group called Masters Coach with a bunch of people, you've seen them all, they're legends here in this channel. I had the opportunity for a season, a short period of time where I would have a weekly meeting with Josh Metal and Jay. And I can remember as everyone's schedules were getting compressed, that Josh asked for the pivot to move it to a Saturday. And I can remember Jay saying, you know what, guys, I love you both, but my Saturday is my family day. And so this is someone who not just says that he protects his time, he actually protects his time. He's like, no, me and Kingston, that's time for us. And so I've got so much respect for Jay. And that's the story that I think exemplifies someone who not only pours into others, but also makes sure that he protects his time and pours into the people that are most important to him. Welcome, Jay.
Thanks for having me today, Todd. That's a good memory of. I can still remember those calls with you and Josh. I remember the office that I was in at that time. We had some good conversations.
It's so funny the days that we all had, and behind the scenes, Josh is at this conference with me. I was sitting next to him. I already told Jay, Josh wanted to give him a big virtual hug. But for those who don't know, can you give a little bit of background? I mean, from your role in origination to leadership, and kind of what's your kind of involvement now in the mortgage space, so they kind of understand where you're positioned today.
Yeah, started in '03 as a loan officer, kind of fresh out of college, newly married, and was at a large bank with a huge mortgage platform. So I was in their home loan division for 3 years, then switched to a bigger mortgage company, um, and to have the opportunity to open up a branch, and so started managing in '06. And just started with, it was just my team went over, and we built that branch up to about 500 million in branch volume. And at the time was, during that season I was around 120 million in annual production personally. And then that company got acquired by a big national bank that just didn't feel like it was a great space for mortgage at the time, or how I perceived it to be. And so then I kind of talked to a bunch of different companies and got introduced to Cornerstone, and have been at Cornerstone now 16 years, and kind of went over with the intention to, keep my team production rolling, rebuild a branch, but, to do more, build the market for Seattle. And so that grew into kind of a regional role, but kind of got to wear all the different hats. And now about 14 months ago, I accepted a position to run national retail production for Cornerstone. So
That is awesome. That
yeah.
is awesome. So you're talking to someone here who's sat in your seat, whichever seat you're in, and brings a lot of value. And one of the things that I really respect, and certainly if you're not following Jay on social, you should, is Jay tells a lot of stories and talks about what he learned from his dad, who was is it safe to say he was your best friend?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just remember all the years, right? So Jay grew up playing basketball, still coaches and is involved in basketball, and his dad was his coach and a coach. And I just love that you tell so many stories about life, and you do so many teaching lessons through what you learned from your dad. And so as I'm assuming you and Dave picked this title out, calling this a weekly sales meeting. So how do you want to kick off this weekly sales meeting today?
Well, every meeting is going to be started with gratitude, so we could kick it off with some gratitude. We always kind of have two subtle rules to the gratitude exercise that we do. Is one, you can't say family because you should be grateful for your family. That's kind of like too easy of a layup. And then the second one is in Seattle, you can't be grateful for the weather because, again, it's another one like you're not happy. You obviously are happy it's sunny in Seattle if it's sunny. So again, just trying to take away two easy layups because the gratitude exercise is more beneficial when you have to scan the world um, for things to be grateful for. So I'm going to say I'm thankful. I'll start off and I'll do three. I'm thankful for Mortgage Coach and the investment that it has made on my life and my business, and I'm grateful for past coaching groups that have connected with people that make me better, such as yourself, Todd. So I'm thankful for you. And then lastly, I'm thankful for the technology advancements that we have, that we can be in different parts of the world, that we can connect and share. And whether somebody watches this later or is on live, hopefully there's opportunity for people to learn at least from my past mistakes.
I love it. I love it. And that's there's always a spot for three gratitudes in my win by noon planner. So I'll read the three that I wrote this morning. One was time with Josh, Jake, and Kristen, because Kristen Messerly was in town yesterday. The four of us had dinner last night. It was pretty amazing. Uchi sushi, omakase, like it was over the top. I got to hang out with my mom after dinner, so that was fun. I'm staying at her house while I'm here back visiting Arizona, and then it said opportunity to catch up with Jay. So selfishly, like I said, as I really wanted to be all in on this conference, and I'm here to learn. And I was like, couldn't pass up the opportunity to hang out with you. So I think it's really important when people think about gratitude. I just listened to an Andrew Huberman short brief on gratitude. So those of you who don't listen to his podcast, he's an ophthalmologist, neurobiologist from Stanford University. Ironically, lives somewhere near me in Venice Beach, which is kind of odd because I thought he'd be in Palo Alto, but he's not. And he said actually the best benefit of gratitude is when you receive gratitude from others, the receipt of gratitude. So I thought that was pretty cool. It's for me, I've always felt that it's a way to turn around to be more positive is to give gratitude. But he's like, well, actually, the magic sauce is in receiving gratitude. So for me, I think about that now when I see people and I say to them, hey, I'm super grateful for you. And then I get really specific about why I'm grateful for them. Because if I'm like, hey, I'm just grateful for you, Jay, I don't think that says a lot. But if I say, hey, I'm grateful for the leadership and what I've observed in Jay and how he protects his schedule and how he talks about his relationship with his family and with his father, these things were, important for me to hear because I made me focus on my father when he was around, just like you've focused on your father when he was around. And so just kind of another side thing about remember to be grateful for other people as you see them.
Yeah, I think that's good. When you say that, it made me think of something that one of our market leaders in Alaska, Rhonda Johnson, she gave a seminar on the power of our words, and she said one of the most missed things is to say you're welcome when somebody says thank you,
Hmm.
and that we have a tendency to say, hey, no problem. Well, basically, you referenced problem, right? And so if somebody's thinking about a problem, you say, hey, no sweat. Like, well, actually, there might have been some hard work that went into doing what you did. And just using the simple language of you're welcome is a key power phrase that you always want to make sure you use. So Rhonda taught me that. And I really try to make sure anytime somebody thanks me that I say you're welcome in response.
I love that. I love that. That's awesome. All right. So now we did our gratitudes at our sales meeting. What comes next?
Next at the sales meeting would likely be wins. And what we've changed the phrase. So Kelly Marsh, one of our SVPs in the sales, national sales team. She changed it because we had it as wins and losses because I think you oftentimes you learn more in the than the pain than you do in the glory, right? As a coach, when I was coaching kids in basketball, I'd say we either win or we learn, right?
Yeah.
And so anyway, somehow, I didn't come up with it, but she did in our national sales meeting. So we would do wins and learns. And so we would just share success stories or situations that, hey, I made a mistake. I didn't realize, this non-Q investor has this wrinkle, and we found it at the last minute, and it kind of put a booger in the deal, and then we had to like figure out and pivot and add a co-bar and all this stuff. So typically we always find a way to get the deal done, but there was a lot of pain from not doing it right the first time. And so we want to be able to take those lessons of success, and those lessons of learning, and make sure those get broadcast out to the team so that people are aware of those. And I think those are nice, as you said, hey, you like to tell stories, Jay. I do. And I like to be able to take those stories as things that we did. I don't need to say I did it. I don't need to say that my team did it, but I can say we did it. We at Cornerstone, and so if I'm talking to, a realtor or a partner or a builder, or if I'm in a presentation, I have more arrows in my quiver based off of those success stories from our team, our collective, organization. And so we can always come back to, we did it. And again, that's, another big, core conviction of mine, something I learned from studying, Nick Saban and other coaches, is you never say I as a leader, you always say we. You never say me or mine, you always say ours. So you're always going to use those. And they actually did a study, the Wall Street Journal had an article, probably about the time we were in that coaching group. So it's probably 12, 15 years ago now, but they did a study and they showed the SEC football coaches, and the coaches that had the highest winning percentage said we, us, our the most. And the coaches with the lowest percentage said me, I statements.
It's so interesting, right? There's just so much opportunity in team, right? In that opportunity. What would be some wins that you've seen recently that you think would be either surprising or helpful to the community?
Some recent wins would be leveraging portfolio solutions, the group think that we have, being able to leverage different ways to underwrite the file. So I would say, leveraging non-QM has been a big one. I know everyone's probably expanded their non-QM portfolio or non-portfolio, or if you have portfolio programs, but leveraging the expansion in our, you think about like what we had a couple years ago now to what we all have collectively in the non-QM space, and they're just really nuanced. So I think being able to dig into, how this investor, and it's not just one investor, right? So like Deep Haven might have 4 or 5 different, variations of their non-QM product. So being able to leverage that, I would say being able to help your client win in a competitive situation. We've had quite a few wins in the builder space, with, in our leveraging our builder programs, or, going down the path of leveraging the partnership opportunities. So I can think about that a little bit more as far as like specific wins of like what somebody did to make a deal happen. But I think it's for us, it's some of that process of the sales meeting is people share how they got to the win, so then they know who they can go to the next time something comes up, or who is the right resource for different situations, for that help. But I'd say, I don't know if I answered that question well enough for you.
No, you did. I mean, I think to me, it exemplifies a specific example, right? Well, a few examples, but really the specific one about, we're all better together, right? If we can exchange the ideas on where we're at. And I do think that, if you're a loan officer listening to this or a leader of loan officers listening to this, I still, when I talk to loan officers, they struggle in specifically in the non-QM space, which, I hear is going to be above 20% of overall production this year. And so if someone's looking to grow their business who didn't do any non-QM last year, that you can just, in a flat market, you could grow at 20% by just learning to be great on that. The people that
Right.
you're saying no to, who actually you might be able to say yes to, and you kind of nailed it, right? Every investor is, it's overwhelming. And so when you can have, a room full of people, whether it's just two people or it's 22 people who have all looked at it and be able to share that knowledge, I think is super important. And then, I just think that I knew you were going to use some sports analogies. Is there kind of a favorite story of, from the basketball coaching chair from you or your dad that, where you guys had a win? One of the, I've seen just so many videos that you've posted, recently on that. Is there a story that's kind of your, kind of speaks in Dave's words on the, you're the code of the Crowell family?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think, and it's kind of timely beginning that we're beginning the year. So I kind of got really into martial arts in my early years. I saw The Karate Kid in the theater. I think I was 5 years old the summer that came out, and I saw it 5 times in the movie theater. And I was like, I want to start karate. So I ended up doing, some form of martial arts for about 10 years, maybe a little longer. Maybe it was 11. But anyway, I kind of came in late to basketball. We were always around basketball. My dad's running all these camps and he's a coach. And so I kind of got the basketball bug late elementary school, but I was behind. And so I started grinding and working hard. And so anyway, summer going into my eighth grade year, participated at one of his camps, and it was like the best week of the summer. With typically you have it was the week of the summer that always had the most competition, and I played in a league with some kids that were either my age and there was quite a few kids that were a year older, so that many of those kids were going to be playing high school basketball, and I made the all-star team, and somehow I missed part of the message, but my dad all summer had been talking about the importance of being a serious basketball player. So I'm going to tell you, there were many times up to this point where I would be at some kind of clinic or gym, and someone would go up to my dad and say, "Hey, where's your boy?" And they'd point at me and be like, and you could literally see their face like, "Oh, really? Like that kid sucks." That happened a ton of times. Okay. So I'm at my highest point that I can think of ever in my basketball journey. We got about an hour and a half drive home. And we haven't left the campus of where the camp was. So we're driving off property, and I'm feeling cloud nine. I made all-star. I had a great, my team won the championship, played well in the championship game. I'm feeling like all-time high. And I say, "Hey, Dad, do you see I made the all-star team?" "Yeah." Doesn't give me a whole lot. "Hey, Dad, you see most of the kids are going, all the other guys on the high school team, for the most part, they're going to be, I mean, the all-star team, they're going to be in high school next year." And he's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Dad, you see how well I played in the championship?" "Yeah." I'm not getting any kind of love. And my dad's a big, passionate, fun-loving guy. I'm just not getting a lot in that moment. So I'm a little bit, and I said, "Dad, do you think I'm a serious basketball player now?" And this is the part where I missed the talks all friggin' summer, where he talks about what being a serious basketball player. And he goes, "Do you have your goals written down where you see them and review them daily?" My answer was no. He says, "Do you have a written workout plan that's 45 to 60 minutes, individual work that you do 5, 6 days a week, separate from your team and, club activities?" I said, "No." He goes, "Really simple then. You're not a serious basketball player." Okay. Todd, I go from the highest high that I've been up until in my eighth grade year to my lowest that I've ever been. We don't speak the whole way home.
Oh, that's uncomfortable.
And part of me is like, my dad is a savage. Like, how sweet is it that he just sat in the silence?
Hmm.
Didn't try to comfort it, Didn't try to like repair. There was really nothing for him to repair. It's not like he did something wrong.
Yeah, that's what a lesson though,
But
right?
listen, I pull into the driveway, I slam the door, I don't unpack my bags, I don't say to don't go to my, say hi to my mom. I go straight to my room, I sat down at my desk and I wrote down my goals. Not all those were hit, but I'm going to tell you, I had those goals. I reviewed them daily. I developed a workout plan. I did it consistently. And at the end of the day, that was the formula for doing well in school. When I got married, I became a serious husband because I wrote down my goals and I wrote down actions that I could follow. Now, you and I have been to other things like Master's Coach where they talk about life planning. That was kind of a simple way to learn what I got from my dad, which was be serious at what you do. And that means you have goals that are written down that we review often, and you have a plan of action to get there. So when I became a mortgage banker, I sat down and became a serious mortgage banker like right in the first week. I had my goals, I had my vision board, I knew my actions that I needed to do with consistency. And so, are you a serious mortgage professional in 2026? Do you have your goals written down? Do you know what's going to take to get there? And so I think I think about a profound thing. I mean, I probably shared that in the mortgage space before. I've told that story. But for me, you talk about a Kroll story. That's probably, the most impactful moment of my life.
Oh, I think it's huge. It gives me chills actually. I mean, literally as I'm sitting here thinking about it, because ultimately, I think everyone's heard this before, right? And then you use the word consistency. Recently listened to an interview of Bill Gurley, who was a venture capital guy, but he's got a unique background. He's got a book coming out in February, which I don't know what it's called, but I can't wait to read it, where he's going to talk about, it seems like it's going to be geared, my perception is geared towards young people on how to find your passion. He talked about what is it that you're spending time on outside of work that you're passionate about, and that should be what you do. So I love that whole idea too, where he's like, you have to have a plan of how you're going to work out outside of practice, right? I can remember when, I got in the mortgage business and I was studying, I studied guidelines, which, now, oh God, that makes me want to throw up. But I studied guidelines because I wanted to be confident, right? Because I think confidence goes a really far way. But then once I got past that, I was studying the greats of the mortgage business. I was part of the communities and watching the people who some of them are still legends in the business and going at it now. But I was studying how to be better in my own time. I was studying how to give better advice. And you've all heard it before. Literally my first day in the mortgage business, I bought MortgageCoach on a disc that I still have. I recently found it. And I just became, it was a student of what I needed to do. And so I think that, anytime when we talk to top producers, are you still surprised when you talk to someone who's doing really well, but seems like they've hit that ceiling of complexity and you find out they just haven't written down their goals?
I think that I think a lot of people maybe forget to reset the goals. Um, where I find a bigger issue today is not in the process of going and sitting down and reviewing their goals. I think that there is a miss on the why.
Hmm.
I listened to a podcast the other day and it was kind of around planning and they said one of the things to do. And so I do a thing like that with my kids where we sit down at the beginning of the semester, like my dad would do after the first week of school. And I just say, hey, tell me what your report card is going to look like in June.
Hmm.
So and that was always a practice. Like, I don't want to be surprised. Tell me what it's going to look like. And so they write it down and, um, they have a week to kind of like assess the class. Like, my daughter's like, this teacher seems really hard and it's not my favorite subject. That might be an A minus. Like, okay, like I'm not going to really push back on that. They kind of know where they should be. Um, and so we go through that exercise. This time I added a wrinkle because of this podcast message, which is you need to tie in your goals to a value and why that value is important. Because just
Hmm.
getting good grades, like why is that important? And if we can attach that to the goal, like, hey, I want to be this level soccer player. I want to be this level basketball player. Well, why is that important to you? Hey, I want to be this level of loan officer. And there are many that have been able to and continue to have great success on one aspect of the mortgage practice, which is fiscal reward, right? And some people are still like, hey, they're 10, they're 15 years, they're still amped up about that commission check. I think for a lot of people, that tires, and most scientific data shows that for the majority of people, that if you're just making it about extrinsic motivators, being on a reward, being able to post your top 1%, whatever these things are that get you excited, they don't last. They're not sustaining fuel. And so for me, I've always had to come back to what is my why? Why do I do what I do? Why do I show up in the way that I want to? And tying that to core values. And I think that's what, why I've been at Cornerstone for so long is our commitment to core values and core convictions. Are we perfect? No. Are we, do we make mistakes? 100%. But at the end of the day, we're striving to live out those core values and those core convictions. And that to me is paramount above, the external components, what my commission check is, what my income is, where I land on some production report. Because at the end of the day, those things are not going to last the test of time. For example, my dad, he's impacted tons of people. Nobody cares about how much money he made. Nobody cares about what car he drove. Nobody cares about what clothes he wore. Nobody cares whether he had a nice watch or he had a just a Timex. Nobody cares about those things. They care about how he made them feel. And so now he had some giftings that I've seen very few possess. But at the end of the day, it was about living a life of virtue and making an impact. And for me, I'm not going to be able to play his game because he was kind of like, one of, very few. Just like Bill Hart is a magnetic, fun coach. Like it's hard. Nobody can be another Bill.
Mm-mm.
But you can be the best version of yourself. And it all comes back to whether it's a Bill Hart or a Fred Kroll or a Dave Savage or a Todd Bookspan, people that are making a big impact in their world. The one common thread between those four people that we mentioned are a commitment to core convictions, a commitment to values that stand the test of time, not being perfect at those. You make mistakes, I make mistakes, Dave makes mistakes, but we show up with intent to really strive hard to live a life that brings value outside of financial impact.
Yeah, that is so huge. And I think that's a struggle. I do think a lot of people get into the mortgage business for the check, right? I mean, I can literally remember literally just almost it's like maybe a mile from here getting off the freeway with my friend Steve McFate, who got me in the mortgage business, and him talking to me about it. And sorry, the lights in my room here just went off. I think I got to wave my arms or something. Well, who knows? But I'm in this room. But now it's in the dark. But that's all right. I'm a little blurry. Hold on. All right, maybe it'll come back in. But ultimately, I can remember that conversation, and when he said how much money I could make doing a loan, then I was like, huh, well, all right, it's a maybe, and I'm embarrassed to say that now. But I'm super grateful for the lessons that I learned in the mortgage business and the people that I impacted. And I do think that that's, one of the things I learned really quick. And I think it's because you mentioned Bill Hart, who was my first coach. And I always say he made me an amazing loan originator, but really more importantly, he made me a better human. And it was really the whole idea of digging in on the why, what's important to me, in every category of life, right? You mentioned your relationship with your wife, with your dad, with your kids. I mean, all these relationships that are so important. And then how do I get to that future vision of what I want it to look like from my current reality now? And what are those steps to take intentionally? What is your current process for coaching people through business planning and how to figure those things out?
I think it's really going to come back to what are your goals and why are those important to you? And the clearer you get to those two attaching that, then it makes getting up and going and doing the work key. But
Yeah,
I think so oftentimes right now what I see is the biggest issue is I hear the word burnout a lot. I'm feeling burnout. I'm feeling fatigue. I'm feeling, like I'm in this hamster wheel. And I kind of like feel like nothing's changed. Like it's not different than the last 23 years, previous 23 years outside of a few windows where it was like you had ice cold water and you were selling it in the desert. And it was just easy to do good business. But outside of that, like when I started, it was after a refi wave. I was young and realtors didn't want to give me business, so I had to figure out, what is my niche? And like you talked about earlier, is if you can kind of zoom out a little bit and think about today is totally fresh. People that feel like they're on the hamster wheel, probably you weren't doing non-QM loans 2 years ago. And now you're saying that's 20% of the business, and you could grow your business by 20% if you just went and got a portion of that 20% of the business. And there's a whole new category you get to go learn. Nobody, in my opinion, is a master of non-QM because they haven't been doing it long enough, right? Like nobody has 10,000 hours in non-QM. And
Mhm.
so it's trying to dig into the thing. So I think on starting the business planning kind of discussion that you talk about is what is really important to you and how does that connect to what you do? And in the spirit of Martin Luther King, that was his day yesterday, right? What he said is anybody can be great because all you need to do to be great is to serve.
Hmm.
And so service is connection to greatness. And I think that one of the misses that everyone has in the mortgage industry, and we see it from time to time, people are like, well, maybe I'm going to go do something different because it feels like a more vocational, impact. And part of it is like if you look at what we do, we all probably got into it because of the finances. Like it's a hard job to imagine if you got paid the same, which and you love gardening, would you be a mortgage person or go be a gardener? If you love teaching ballet, you're not going to make what you can make in mortgage, but if it was everyone got paid the same, you go do what you love doing. But here, if you love people and you have this idea that you can go make an impact through service, what better platform than mortgage? If you've been doing it a while, you got a great wealth of knowledge. People need that advice. We're going to be competing against the machine, and they don't know, they don't have, that machine doesn't have the empathy that you have to be able to go impact people's lives. And every individual is unique. And so you get to have, if you close 100 loans this year, you get to solve 100 unique puzzles, which is really fun. So I think the biggest thing is coming back to a bigger picture of what your goals are and why those are important, and then what are the core values that you want to live regardless of what you do, and then how that ties back into your vocation and occupation as a mortgage professional.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, what a great way to walk through it because I do think, you've got to have it here. Like, I really do believe that our community in particular, that we all love the idea of serving others and that end result, whether it's that you want to help people grow wealth through home ownership, whether you want to give people just the sense and security that it's their own roof over their head, that they don't have to worry about the landlord booting them out or raising their rent or doing something different. There's so many different ways that you can view it. But it's just this opportunity to serve others. And I love what you said, right? Figure out what your niche is and get passionate about that. And you can have more than one niche, but start with one, get great at it, whether that's VA loans, whether it's first-time home buyers. It's one of the things that I'm really proud about what we do at First Home IQ, where we're helping loan officers become ambassadors and have a new treasure chest of presentations to give to first-time home buyers, to the youth of America, high school and college students, that you can also use within your own database. Is be passionate about something and figure out, how do I get better at it? What's the community I can jump into to be really good with that? I met with a real estate agent last week. We did a Zoom we did a Zoom lunch. We were in different states with another friend of ours from Mortgage Coach, Lori Richardson. And the agent talked about her passion for the military, and she wasn't always passionate about it, but she married someone who's a veteran, and talked about how she's gotten really passionate, how that's the community that she wants to serve. So I think there's a ton of opportunity there if you just step back for a minute and you go back to what Jay talked about, figuring out your why. So, all right, let's keep going on our sales meeting here, unless you want to jump and say anything else. So we did our wins and learns. What's next?
Typically, we'd have someone from the underwriting space either talk about a new program or a niche program. We may talk about something that we're seeing from an underwriting standpoint to help people just make sure and understand the guidelines. Whether it's, like I said, a new investor, or maybe we're seeing the same kind of hiccup, like there's a trend on this kind of program. Maybe it's, jumbo, we're seeing just kind of a consistency where people are trying to ask for fund arounds or exceptions on like a jumbo product with an investor that we have hey, we can't make an exception to it. Like, I know you think the conditions are dumb, and obviously I don't bring that approach to it. That's why I don't talk in that segment of the meeting anymore. But we would have an educational component to meat and potatoes, tied to guidelines, tied to investors, and definitely in a forward state. But we're kind of do that update from an underwriting investor standpoint, talking about what happens.
Yeah, so just gaining knowledge, right? So you've had the shared knowledge of everyone, talking through what they've won at and where they've learned, and then now you've got the expert coming in and saying, here's the guardrails and here's what else you need to know.
Yeah, and here's how to make it work. And then, hey, here's some exciting things. Maybe some of those new investors, or maybe that guideline change makes things easier, how that ties in to it.
Yeah, I love that. And so, I hope this is helpful for those of you. I think from a couple of perspectives, right? If you're a leader, this is just a great framework maybe to see if you can't tweak your sales meeting slightly. And then if you're a loan officer, maybe these are some suggestions that you can bring to your leadership if you feel like you're not getting poured into like Jay's pouring into his folks. So underwriter comes in, you go through this, and then what's next? Is the meeting wrapping up, or are there more segments after that?
We may do like a marketing segment or a promotion. We may talk about a concept around, we might talk about some scripting, some things that are working, or hey, here's an email campaign to be dripping with, maybe we're going to say, hey, let's go after refis. And then I'll typically wrap up with something around mindset, because I think that that's such an important part of just the process of being in sales, right? And it's a hard job. You're going to have more no's than you are going to get yeses. And you should. Just like Steph Curry is going to miss more shots than he's going to make. So if you're really good at sales, then you should be getting a lot of no's, and be okay with that. But I think that also comes from setting a commitment to that. In the beginning, we also may do a highlight on a value. So we may have somebody share one of our core convictions or core values statements to the group, and then give like their own kind of personal impact from how that applies to their life, or why that's important to them, or maybe how they're living that out. But always kind of typically we'll end with a mindset thing. We could do something as simple though, like during the course of that meeting, is we may show somebody might get on Mortgage Coach and show how they're showing like a builder forward, or they may show how they're doing a temp buy down, or they may show, a strategy, 3 different strategies that they're making sure that we're articulating to consumers. The importance of showing buy downs. So that could be something there, but then mindset is always going to be kind of an endpoint.
Yeah, I love that. I got to put on my Dave Savage hat real quick. And you said, okay, we're showing more, Mortgage Coach and different TCAs. So remember, if you're thinking to myself, oh my gosh, those different strategies that Jay just talked about, I would have no idea how to do. If you just go to trustengine.com, there's a training section there. They're running trainings every day of the week to help make you better as someone using that tool, which still is the biggest differentiator, right? I think from a loan officer perspective, Dave's done study after study. There's white papers that show loan officers who use Mortgage Coach have less price exceptions. So if you're a leader and your team is not using Mortgage Coach, you should be thinking about that. But I think it's more important for you as a loan officer because what happens is that when you're using Mortgage Coach, a total cost analysis and showing different options to a client, and you're giving them the pros and cons to each. So you're remaining neutral. You're not saying this is what I would do, because again, what you would do and what the client would do could be polar opposites of each other. But here's why you may do this, and here's why you might not. Here's why you do this other one. There's better buy in there's better customer satisfaction when they choose the option that they run with versus you picking an option for them. Yes, every once in a while they're like, I can't do it. Just what would you do? And then you have to walk them through that. But one of the things that I teach when I teach exactly what to say is we've got to be better at being neutral, giving no advice until we earn that right and walking them through. But I just found that when a client got to choose their scenario, they were more happy with the result because it was their choice, not somebody else's choice. So had to put on my mortgage coach hat there for a minute. And then I want to throw out one other
I
thing.
think I think one thing that I just kind of want to add to that is just the importance of asking good questions along the way, because part of what's going to separate you and the machine, in my opinion, is to remember their story and their why of what they're doing. Because you never should tell somebody you should do this 1 point buy down, or no points are terror. You should never pay points. And there are a lot of loan officers that are continually stuck in the one solution quote because they just don't think points should ever be paid. And like you said, those are wrong. But what can happen is if I go to chat or the AI bot, I can ask it a bunch of questions on what's the best strategies on short term, long term, da 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 da. So just helping people with that part of the solution, the machine can beat you on. But the machine can't ask really good questions of, hey, why are you buying? And what's your time horizon? And what's really important to you about your financing? Because when they start making those selections based off their selection, based off of multiple options, you can remember, hey, Todd, didn't you guys say you're thinking about, you got 2 kids that are going to college in a couple of years? Do you think you're going to be in the house as long as da 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 da? And then that's a question based on what they previously said. And then that starts extracting good information for you to be able to bring value to them. But if you weren't listening and you weren't being curious, leading to good questions, then you don't have the ammo to be able to come back and add real value to their decision process.
Yeah, I think that's really huge because I think, we used to say that, right, technology is not going to replace loan officers, but loan officers who use technology will replace those who don't. Now you just substitute AI in there in that same piece. And I do think it's that human connection. It's kind of ironic that I'm literally at the Human Connection Institute broadcasting, because that is going to be the differentiator, right? And unfortunately, there are going to be the people who say, I don't need you, I got chat, and it's going to give me all the answers I want. And the interesting thing, I've got a loan officer on our team, right? So I don't originate anymore. I think you all know that, but I still have the team that I used to lead and originate with. And one of our loan officers who was kind of hesitant to use a TCA, I sat in on one of the sales calls week before last, and he said, "Oh, it's amazing the AI on the TCA," because his client went in after he sent the TCA and he got to see the questions, because the the mortgage coach, that AI piece gives you what your client, you can go in and see what your client asked it. So he could see the questions that the client was asking. So he was better prepared for the next conversation because he had missed those points that were super important to the client, but the client then asked the AI chatbot. And so it's taking technology over that human connection and then making him a better loan officer. He was just blown away by that. And I think it's going to make him a better loan officer over time because now he's going to learn the gaps that he has in the conversations with clients, because he's going to learn to ask more questions to hopefully ferret that out live. But the cool thing is that the technology of the TCA jumped in and helped support him to win the transaction, because he primarily works with our builder who has 2 other lenders in there. So he's literally competing on every transaction. And so therefore his advice matters because oftentimes, the other folks are willing, they're just going after price. They're not going to go after advice.
Really good.
So I think, so let's talk through this connection piece. What else are you encouraging loan officers to do from a process perspective to win now that, we know that you have to be you have to be better. You have to understand what the client's after. Are there any things like, certain presentations or certain conversations that you're coaching your loan officers on?
Yeah, I think it's making sure you have, and it should be different for the people, but do you have a prospect to client journey? And so what is your best practices? And some of that should be morphed based off of just being mindful to think like, man, this was a great transaction. These things went really well through it. And how do you repeat that? So in my mind, it's how do I create, more tangible connection with people through the journey. And so, I think one of the big mistakes that people make is they send people to fill out their pre-qualification form before an initial conversation. So, Todd, you get referred to me by Nancy. There's maybe a joint introduction. Hey, Jay, looking to get pre-approved. Nancy said you do a good job. What's my next steps? Well, it'd be really easy just to send you the pre-qualification form. But I think it's a huge miss. Hey, I'd really like to connect for introductory phone call. When can we get on the phone? Need 10 minutes. But I get to make a connection because they're probably doing that to somebody else. So do I know, hey, let's get their names, let's see what their story is, what's their timeline, what's important to them. I can then tell them about why they should work with my team in Cornerstone and give a couple nuggets of why we're a credible source to get their mortgage with. Make an advertisement or make your elevator speech, whatever you pitch, whatever you want to say. Second of all, then you can walk them through the process and explain, hey, what your journey looks like. One thing we have to remember is in our interactions with people, they are vetting us, but I think to be an abundant loan officer, you also need to vet, are these the right people for you? And so why do I want them to fill out my pre-qualification form? Why do I want to spend money on a credit report if I haven't spoken with them and see if we think there's some good energy there? Because you might not be the right fit. For example, you get on the phone and the initial call and they're like, hey, what's your rate? I want the lowest rate. I need this rate. And you can just get the vibe that you're never going to be that person. They need to call a, consumerdirect.com model. That's going to get that's going to be for them. And so it's using some of the things that we learned from Larry Kindle, from Ninja, to make sure there is some mutual peace. And I like to have my steps because by the time I get to a consultation, I know that they're a viable person. Like they're they have skin in the game as much as I do. So I'd say, what's your client journey? How do you underwrite the client as much as they're underwriting you to be someone you want to spend your time, energy, and effort with?
I think that's huge. And I think there's some loan officers who are like, oh my gosh, I can never imagine not wanting somebody's business. However, I think they can all imagine an experience where they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just wasted all that time with that client. And I never use the term wasted time. I had to retrain myself to realize that I was in a learning journey of how could I have detected that sooner?
Mhm.
How could I have maybe try to get them from a no to a maybe and a maybe to a yes, right? That's some of the exactly what to say journey that Deborah Bird and I teach in our certifications. And because it's so hard, but then there's just this opportunity. It's kind of like when you get to fire your first real estate agent because you have enough leads and enough business that you have the confidence that you just don't need to do business the way that they want you to do business when it just goes against everything you have. And so I think it's that clarity of understanding those things that you brought up that I think some people need to think through and figure out, am I embodying that piece when, that I'm hearing Jay talk about.
And I'm just going to say, everyone has always said, because I brought this up for a long time, is, easy to say when you're a big producer, but abundance internally precedes abundance externally.
Mm.
And so we have to be disciplined to set our values. Now, in a season where you're not super busy, then, you can you can go a little bit further along with somebody that like, hey, this is probably a low probability client that's going to end up working with me, but I have capacity to do that. And you can make that decision. Like, hey, loan officer's mad. Like, hey, why are you mad? You just told me, like they'll come to me and say, I lost a deal. And I'm like, we never lose a deal because it's never yours, right? Like you didn't lose $100. If you had $100 in your pocket and you went to the mall and you forgot it somewhere, then you lost something. But that client was never yours. It's not a possession. Okay. You missed the opportunity or they chose to go somewhere else. Wasn't the right fit for them. But when you have some of those ones, and I'm like, hey, you're mad. Like you knew up front. Like, did they say? Well, they told me, they wanted the lowest rate. I'm like, okay, well, you knew that was going to be a lower probability. That's okay. Like you may choose to chase that at a season, depending on your season. So that doesn't mean you're going to say, hey, I got these rigid boundaries, and I'm going to be abundant. Well, if you're slow, then you can chase some stuff. If you're slow and a realtor that kind of uses you from time to time, if you have time for that person, then you can give them that time. But if that realtor that uses you but doesn't treat you like a partner calls you when you have three of your partners asking for help, well, you're going to prioritize them to fourth. You never would take that person to the top, but if you're slow, it's January 2026. You can say, I'm going to choose. You also could say, you know what? That client's not going to be good for my mental health. That client's not going to be good for my space. I have a low likelihood of that client converting with me, and I'm going to be really pissed if I spend a bunch of time with them. Then just say, hey, I'm probably not the right person for you. Or you can just give them a really high quote, and they're going to go somewhere else right off the bat. So you have some optionality in how you want to do it. You don't need to say, hey, go fly a kite, I'm not your person. You can do it respectfully and tastefully a lot of different ways, but you have to figure out what's going to protect this so that you can go be your best out there. But remember, abundance internally precedes it externally. And you also have to remember those files that eat up all your time take you away from people that could really use your services.
I think that's so huge. I think that's so huge. I think it's, again, I've never heard someone put that abundance internally precedes external abundance, but I totally know it's true. And I think it's a different mindset. So you mentioned mindset. For those of you who didn't watch the interview that we did last Friday with Jonathan Roach, that would be a great one for mindset. What's kind of your go-to? Like, how would you, we're in the, final 8 minutes here. Like, how would you take, how would you coach the loan officer who's here, who's struggling with mindset right now as we close out?
Well, I mean, obviously, you kind of got to unpack that a little bit, because so what mindset item are we trying to tackle?
I think it's, you mentioned the burnout piece, right? I think people think it's been really hard for the last few years because they
Hmm.
remember how easy it was
Hmm.
versus you and I got in the business about the same time. And, I feel like loan officers have to work just as hard now in this market as we did, 20 some odd years ago. Like that hasn't changed, but people don't want to work that hard because they remember how easy it was and they were making so much money.
Hmm. So I'd want to say the reality of it is this is one of the ones that I like to think about for my people is, do you have children? Most of the loan officers that are in the burnout phase likely do. Some of the
Mm.
burnout phase likely have grandkids. And here's my statement to them. Are you showing up for work at the same level that you want your kid to show up for at school?
Mm.
Are you showing up for work at the same level you want them to show up for piano recital or piano practice or ballet practice or the drama club or the sports team? Because I've coached a lot of kids and I got a parent that comes up to me and they're mad about how their kids going at it. But I'm like, are you modeling what you want them to do in your life? If Because I believe, how we are operating, and I think that's been the big jet fuel for me is in my show. I want my kids to go work their ass off at school. If I'm gonna pay for them to play on some team, I don't care the best kid. You better freaking work hard. You better, when I go to the game, I don't care if you score a goal, but play hard. Am I doing that when I get to the gym in the morning? Am I doing that being disciplined with what I eat? Am I doing that when I go to my desk and get after it? Am I hitting my sales calls? Am I doing my commitments? Am I following through at the same level? Because if I'm not, then shut up when I'm frustrated with how they play.
Mm.
And my reality is I see way too many people and they tell me, I'm frustrated with how my kid's doing. Are you modeling what you want them to do? If you're not, then shut up. You got no right to tell your kid to work hard. So here's a mindset piece. Am I operating in my mortgage practice the way I want my kids or my grandkids or somebody that matters to you? Maybe you're not a parent. Okay. Do you have a niece? Do you have a friend? Or do you care a lot about your colleagues? Well, if you care about your colleagues, then work hard because that's going to rub off on them. If you're
Dang.
if you're so what are you burnt out about? And I think that's the part is like one of the things I learned from my dad is I called him in probably a season of feeling burnt out, thinking I should go do something different. And I was whining and, complaining about, oh, my job is hard. And he's a basketball coach. He runs basketball camps for kids. Like, what could be more fun than that, right? And he goes, tell me what you hate about your job. And I list da 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 da. And he goes, wow, those are all the things I hate about my job too. And so I think if people, if you were to, and here's the other reality, like go tap, if you're having a hard time in your space, you got a headspace, call a doctor, tell them, hey, what do you hate about your job? Call somebody in tech. What do you hate about your job? Call somebody who works at BlackRock, grinding 70 hours a week. What do you hate about your job? All of a sudden you kind of go, and I don't believe in comparison, but all of a sudden you kind of go, I got it pretty good. And so I think we just have to come back to how do I remove entitlement? How do I remove pride? How do I come back to how do I operate from a grateful spirit? How do I focus on serving other people? Because if I'm feeling burnt out, that means I'm spending a lot of time in my own feelings. And if I got outside of my feelings, started thinking, man, how can I go help a realtor today? How can I go help a builder today? How can I go help a first-time homebuyer today? And started thinking about other people besides how I feel, I'm going to go make an impact that's actually meaningful.
Dang, that is huge. I think it's this whole idea of, I love how you say, how do I want to show up and how do I expect my kids to show up? I mean, that's a great analogy and a great way to look at it. Cause I was thinking always, okay, even if you don't have kids, right? You're saying, hey, who else is it that I want to show up for? But I think it's this whole idea too. You owe it to yourself, right? Envision the best version of yourself. And then how do I become that person? And I think that, ultimately in the end, it comes back to how can I serve those others that are important out there? And I think that typically just starts with what's the next action I need to do to get in that next conversation, which typically means who do I need to pick up the phone and call, or where do I need to drive to meet the people, right? How do I get in the path of opportunity to meet those people that I want to meet? And so I started off this call talking about how excited I was to get to spend time with you and have a conversation that would be impactful to me selfishly, but I knew more importantly be impactful to everybody else. So I'm just super grateful that you invested the time, that you are so diligent protecting. That was one of the questions that I forgot to ask you is give your best lessons on protecting your time. But I think it's comes down to I know you're crystal clear on who and what is important to you. And once you know what that is, it's pretty easy to push out the noise. Any last thing that you want to make sure that you close out with before we let everyone go get busy?
I just say, thank you. Thank you for what you do, Todd.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
to Dave. I'm just grateful for, I'd say I think we're in the room together when Bill gave that talk around winning by noon, and you've taken that and run with it as this big, it's a business for you. But I think that's how you get really clear. Like, what's your big rock? Like making it home for family dinner, not missing games, having weekends that are centered around connection with your family. Those things need to be prioritized. And then there's still so much more time left in your day that if you just discipline with it, you can get a lot done. So to me, it's using the book span. If I was going to do my own spin, I'd credit you with book ending your days. Like how do I start my day well and how do I finish my day well? how do I start my week well, and how do I finish my week well? Those are the things that are controllable. Like time blocking, like that's impossible and a fantasy that I've never been able to capture. But being able to start days productively, end days productively has been key. But I think most importantly is just super grateful to spend time with you. Thank you for your contributions on my life and my business. Thank you to Mortgage Coach. And let's go all be joyful and make a positive contribution because we have an opportunity through this vocation of being mortgage professionals to serve at a high level. And Martin Luther King says it, if you want to be great, all you got to do is serve.
I just love it. You're welcome. I want to make sure I say that since I learned that lesson today. And thank you. If people want to follow you, where are the best platforms to learn and follow from Jay?
Um, it's hopefully somebody can put it in the chat because I can't type it in right now, but it's at J Blackbird Good. So it's just a play on my last name, which you are saying right is Kroll, but it looks like it's Crowell to me. So Blackbird, the crow, good, well. So it's J, the letter J, Blackbird Good. And that's Instagram. I think it's also Facebook. I'm also on LinkedIn as well, but I do more posting on the Meta space.
Perfect. We will get that in the show notes so that you can all be there. And, on behalf of Dave, the whole Trust Engine community, myself, the Win by Noon world, Jay, you are one of the people that I admire in this business and life and super appreciative of the time that we've shared in the past. And glad I got to spend this time with you today and look forward to the next time.
Awesome. Appreciate you, brother.
All right. See y'all.